The grand chamber of the Galactic Concord was silent, except for the low hum of energy fields and the whisper of alien breaths. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the vast amphitheater, some floating, some standing on many legs, others encased in shimmering suits that kept them alive in the chamber's neutral atmosphere. At the center, suspended in a pale blue containment field, stood 3 humans. They wore plain gray uniforms, no armor, no weapons, no insignia. Just 3 people from a planet that had vanished 2,000 years ago. Above them, seated on a towering dais of black crystal, the Archon of Kethra loomed. Its body was made of interlocking plates that shifted like living glass, and its voice echoed through the chamber like stone breaking under pressure. "You disappeared without warning," it said. "Your colonies were left to rot. Your allies were abandoned. Wars raged in your absence. And now, after 2,000 years, you return. Earth reappears in the void as if it never left. Explain this, or be declared a threat to galactic order." Captain Elias Rourke stepped forward. He was tall, with tired eyes and short dark hair. He didn't flinch at the dozens of weapon emitters pointed at him from the walls. "We didn't vanish," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We were taken. Locked away. Not by choice. And now that we're back, you'll wish we'd stayed gone." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some delegates leaned forward. Others activated personal shields. The Archon's crystalline facets flickered with violet light, signs of alarm. 2,000 years earlier, Earth had simply disappeared. One moment it orbited the sun, blue and green and teeming with life. The next, gone. No explosion, no debris, no signal. Just an empty space where a world should have been. The galaxy assumed it had been destroyed by some unknown catastrophe. Human colonies scattered across nearby systems were left without support. Many were conquered. Others faded into myth. Humanity became a cautionary tale. A species that rose too fast and vanished too, quietly. But Earth hadn't been destroyed. It had been pulled into a pocket, dimension, an artificial fold in space-time created by an ancient race known only as the Watchers. They had watched Earth for millennia, studying how humans handled peace, war, art, and loss. When humanity reached a tipping point, on the verge of either uniting or destroying itself, the Watchers intervened. They didn't destroy Earth, they preserved it. For 2,000 years, Earth floated in a timeless bubble, its people unaware they were gone from the galaxy. Time passed differently inside. To them, it felt like centuries of quiet reflection, of slow evolution, of learning what it truly meant to be human. Now the bubble had opened. Earth returned to its original orbit as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. The humans standing in the chamber weren't the same as those who had vanished. They carried something new, not weapons or shields, but memory. Deep, layered, unbroken memory. Every child born during the exile remembered the stories of those who came before. Every adult could access the knowledge of generations. They hadn't just survived isolation, they had transformed. Back on Earth, cities had grown from living stone. Forests rearranged themselves to guide lost travelers. Oceans pulsed with currents that responded to emotion. The planet itself had become aware in a quiet, ancient way. But the galaxy didn't know that yet. The Archon narrowed its multifaceted eyes. "You speak boldly for a species that vanished and left its children to die." Elias didn't look away. "We didn't leave them. We were stolen. And while we were gone, you rewrote our history. You erased our treaties. You claimed our colonies as spoils. You called us primitive, chaotic, unstable. But look at yourselves. You built an empire on silence and control." Ambassador Lyra Venn, standing beside him, added softly, "We're not here to fight. We're here to remember, and to remind you of what you've forgotten." The chamber grew colder. A delegate from the gas giant Orlan hissed through its breathing mask. "They're dangerous. Their return disrupts the balance." Then something happened. On the main view screen behind the Archon, a live feed from the Sol system flickered. The image showed Earth's moon, not as a dead rock, but shifting. Slowly, silently it moved, not with engines or thrusters, but as if guided by thought. It slid into a new orbit, aligning with 6 other artificial satellites that had been dormant for centuries. Together they formed a perfect geometric lattice around Earth, a shield not made of metal but of resonant energy. Gasps filled the chamber. The Archon rose fully, its plates clattering. "That's impossible. No natural body moves like that without propulsion. Dr. Milo Tarek, the scientist of the group, finally spoke. Earth isn't just a planet anymore. It remembers, and it protects. The Concorde had expected broken refugees. Instead, they faced a world that had spent 2,000 years learning how to listen. To the stars, to time, to itself. The Archon's voice dropped lower, almost fearful. What do you want? Elias looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings who had judged his species for centuries without ever knowing them. We want what we always wanted, he said. A seat at the table. Not as subjects, not as threats, as equals. Silence stretched. The containment field around them flickered, then shut off completely, either a sign of trust or a trap. No one moved. Outside the chamber across the galaxy, news of Earth's return spread like wildfire. On colony worlds, old human descendants stared at the sky, wondering if the stories were true. In military outposts, fleets powered up, unsure whether to prepare for war or welcome. But in the Grand Chamber, 3 humans stood alone, unarmed, unafraid. They had returned not to reclaim what was lost, but to show the galaxy something it had never seen. A civilization that chose wisdom over weapons, memory over might, and patience over power. And the galaxy, for the first time in 2,000 years, had no idea what to do next. The Concorde sent a delegation to Earth under a white truce banner. At its head was Vraxis, a tall reptilian diplomat from the hegemony of Xylos. His scales were the color of rusted iron, and his eyes held the cold patience of a species that measured time in centuries. He expected ruins, dust, silence. What he found instead made his breath catch in his throat. Earth was alive in ways he could not understand. Cities rose not from steel and glass, but from stone that grew like trees, twisting into towers that hummed with soft light. Roads shifted gently beneath his feet, guiding him without words. The air smelled of rain and something deeper, like memory given scent. Children played in fields where flowers bloomed in patterns that changed with their laughter. One child, no older than 6, looked at Vraxis and spoke in a tone that resonated in his bones, not his ears. "You're sad about your brother," she said. Vraxis froze. His younger brother had died in a border skirmish 300 years ago. No record of it existed outside his family vault. He turned to Ambassador Lyra Venn, who walked beside him. "How do they know?" Lyra smiled faintly. "They don't guess. They remember." She led him to a grove where Dr. Milo Tarek waited beneath a canopy of silver leaves. There, Milo explained what had happened during the 2,000 years of exile. "We weren't just trapped," he said. "We were shaped. The pocket dimension didn't stop time, it stretched it. Every generation lived, learned, and passed down not just stories, but actual memory. Not like data. Like feeling. Like truth." He showed Vraxis a small pool of water. "Look," he said. Vraxis leaned over. The water didn't reflect his face. Instead, it showed a scene from long ago. A Xylosian ship docking at a human space station. Humans offering food, medicine, and music. A handshake between his great-grandfather and a human engineer. A treaty signed in good faith. But in the official Concord records, that meeting never happened. According to history, Xylos had always been wary of humans, and humans had always been unstable. "This is false," Vraxis whispered. "No," Milo said gently. "This is forgotten." Back on the Concord's capital world, tensions were rising. The Archon had not yet decided how to treat Earth, but many members of the Council were afraid. They saw Earth's strange abilities not as gifts, but as weapons. When news arrived that a Xylosian patrol cruiser had fired on a human scout ship near Neptune, the Council braced for war, but war did not come. The human ship, small and unarmed, did not return fire. Instead, it broadcast a signal, not a threat, but a memory. Across every channel, in every language, it played the childhood recollections of the Xylosian gunner who had fired the shot. The smell of his mother's scales after rain, the sound of his first hunt, the fear he felt when his clutch sibling fell ill. Raw, human-like emotion poured into the minds of every Xylosian on the cruiser. The ship stopped firing. Minutes later, it powered down completely. The crew opened all comms and surrendered, not to force but to feeling. When Vraxis heard this report, he sat in silence for a long time. Then he asked to see more. Lyra took him to the archive, a vast open space beneath a mountain that pulsed with soft blue light. It wasn't built of machines or screens. It was grown. Living vines held memories like fruit. Touch one and you saw, heard, and felt a moment from Earth's exile. Fraxis touched a vine and saw humans teaching alien children how to paint with starlight. Another showed them healing wounded creatures from a dozen species, even though they hadn't seen those species in centuries. "Why keep all this?" he asked. "Because forgetting is how empires are built," Lyra said, "and remembering is how they fall." Meanwhile, Captain Elias Rourke was preparing something new. In hidden shipyards beneath the Pacific, humans were building vessels unlike any in the galaxy. They had no guns, no missiles, no shields. Instead, their hulls were lined with resonant crystals that could emit harmonic frequencies. These ships didn't destroy enemies, they calmed them. They disrupted aggression at the neural level, replacing rage with clarity, fear with understanding. The Concord called them mind weapons. The humans called them peace bringers. When the first of these ships, named the Stillwater, launched into orbit, the galaxy watched. It didn't attack. It simply drifted near a pirate fleet that had been raiding supply lines for years. Within hours, the pirates dropped their weapons. Some wept, others asked for asylum. This terrified the Concord more than any warship ever could. High, Marshal Corps of the Iron Accord, a hardline faction within the Council, declared Earth a Class Omega cognitive hazard. He argued that humanity's ability to manipulate memory and emotion was a form of psychic warfare. "They don't need bombs," he told the Council. "They make you destroy yourself with your own thoughts." The Archon remained silent, but its crystals darkened with doubt. Back on Earth, Elias met with Lyra and Milo in a quiet garden where the trees whispered in the wind. "They're going to try to isolate us," Elias said. "Block our signals. Cut us off. Let them try," Milo replied. "They don't understand. We've been isolated before. We learned to listen to silence. Now silence listens to us." Days later, the Concord activated the Veil Protocol, a network of chronal dampeners placed around the Sol system. These devices twisted time, creating loops that trapped ships and signals in repeating seconds. No message could get in or out. To the rest of the galaxy, Earth would vanish again, but this time by design. But Earth did not panic. Instead, human ships began appearing outside the veil, not by breaking through but by stepping around it. They had learned to read the folds in time like currents in a river. They moved through the distortions as if walking through mist. One ship even appeared in orbit around the Concord's capital world, broadcasting a single image, a child's drawing of Earth and Xylos holding hands under a shared sun. The drawing was signed by a human girl and a Xylosian exchange student from 2,000 years ago, before the disappearance, before the lies. Fraxis saw the image on his private screen. He touched the signature with a trembling claw. He remembered now. His family had hosted a human child once. They had played in the red sands of his homeworld. The child had given him a seashell from Earth. He still had it, locked away in a box he hadn't opened in centuries. That night, Fraxis sent a secret message to Earth, not as a diplomat. As a friend, the Conquered thought they could silence Earth with time and fear. But Earth had spent 2,000 years learning that silence was not empty. It was full of voices waiting to be heard. And now those voices were rising, not in anger, not in war, but in truth. And truth, as the galaxy was beginning to learn, could not be blocked by any shield. The veil held for 17 days. Around Earth, time twisted in slow spirals. Ships that entered the barrier vanished into loops, repeating the same minute over and over, unable to escape. To the rest of the galaxy, Sul was silent again, just as it had been 2,000 years before. The Concord declared the operation a success. High Marshal Corps gave a speech calling it the necessary quarantine of a dangerous anomaly. But inside the veil, Earth was not quiet. Humans moved through the distorted time like swimmers in a calm sea. They had spent centuries learning to read the rhythm of silence, to feel the pulse of stillness. Time loops did not trap them, they taught them. While the galaxy saw chaos, humans saw patterns. They mapped the veil's weaknesses not with machines but with memory. Every elder recalled how time bent during the exile. Every child could hum the frequency that smoothed its edges. Then, without warning, human envoys began appearing in places they should not have been able to reach. One morning, a small woman in a gray tunic stood in the private garden of Senator Orlan Vex, a gas giant noble who had voted for Earth's isolation. The senator's guards raised their weapons, but she did not move. She simply placed a seed on the stone path and walked away. By nightfall, the seed had grown into a slender tree with silver bark. Its fruit glowed softly. Curious, the senator plucked one and ate it. Instantly, he was overwhelmed. Not by pain, but by memory, his own. He saw himself as a young aide, watching as Concord agents erased records of peaceful human colonies. He remembered signing orders to abandon those worlds, telling himself it was for stability. The fruit showed him the faces of the children who starved because of his silence. He fell to his knees and wept. The next day, he resigned from the council. Similar events unfolded across the galaxy. On the icy world of Narelle, a human left a stone that sang lullabies in the native tongue, songs lost for generations. On the desert moon of Keth 9, a child's drawing appeared on the wall of the Iron Accord's command center. A human and a Kethian sharing water under twin suns. No one knew how it got there. The Concord panicked. They tightened the veil, added more dampeners, doubled patrols. But the more they tried to contain Earth, the more Earth slipped through. Captain Elias Rourke knew the real battle wasn't in space, it was in minds. He gathered a small team and set course for the Concord's Data Core asteroid, a massive rock buried in the outer rings of the capital system. It held every law, treaty, and historical record of the galaxy. It was also heavily guarded. The human ship, the Stillwater, approached not with stealth but openly. When Concord fighters intercepted it, Elias broadcast a single message. "We're not here to steal. We're here to return what was taken." The guards fired warning shots. The Stillwater did not dodge. Instead, it released a soft harmonic pulse. Not a weapon, just a tone tuned to the neural frequency of truth recognition. The Concord pilots froze. Their weapons felt heavy. Their orders felt wrong. Before they could react, the Stillwater docked with the data core. Inside, Dr. Milo Tarek carried a small device shaped like a leaf. It held the archive of absence, the full, unbroken memory of humanity's 2,000 years in exile. Not as data, but as living experience. He connected it to the core's main port. The upload began. Across the galaxy, every being linked to the Concord network, every diplomat, soldier, historian, suddenly felt something. Not a file, not a video, a feeling. They stood in Earth's silent forests. They watched generations of humans teach kindness in the dark. They felt the ache of missing a home they'd never seen. They saw the truth, that Earth had not vanished in chaos, but had been stolen during its moment of greatest hope. On the capital world, riots broke out. Citizens demanded answers. Soldiers questioned orders. Even members of the Iron Accord stared at their hands as if seeing them for the first time. High Marshal Kor, furious, activated the Doomsday Array. Hidden in the frozen edges of the Sol system, ancient satellites left over from a forgotten war woke from slumber. These were planet crackers designed to fire focused gravity beams that could tear a world apart from orbit. The array had only been used once in history. Now it turned its eyes on Earth. "Let them remember this," Kor growled, as their last moment. Back on Earth, alarms did not sound. Panic did not spread. The planet itself seemed to breathe. In the command center beneath Geneva, Elias watched the array power up on the screens. Lyra stood beside him. "They think destruction is the final word," she said. "Then we'll show them a new language," Elias replied. Instead of launching weapons or shields, Earth did something no one expected. The moon shifted again, faster this time. Oceans rose in perfect spirals. The magnetic field around the planet shimmered and reformed into a vast, glowing lattice, not to block the beams, but to catch them. When the Doomsday Array fired, the beams struck the lattice and did not explode. They were absorbed, converted, transformed into pure light. For 3 days, Earth glowed like a second sun, bathing the entire system in golden radiance. And then, Earth spoke. Not with sound, but with memory. A single message sent on every frequency and every language directly into the minds of every sentient being in range. "We remember you too." Each species received something personal. The Xylosians saw their first peaceful trade with humans. The Orlans remembered a human doctor who saved their young during a plague. Even Kor saw a vision. His great-grandmother weak and dying on a battlefield, being given water by a human medic with kind eyes and blood on her hands. The array shut down. Not because it was damaged, but because its operators refused to fire again. Kor stood alone in his war room, trembling. For the first time in his life, he felt shame. The veil collapsed. Time flowed normally again, but the galaxy was changed. The Concord's authority cracked like thin ice. Half its members called for peace talks. The other half whispered of betrayal. Elias looked out at the stars from Earth's surface. The golden light faded, but the silence remained, deeper now, full of questions. The war had not been won with fire. It had been undone with truth, and the real test was just beginning. The Doomsday Array stood silent in the outer dark. Its weapons were cold. Its operators refused to obey orders. High Marshal Kor sat alone in his command chamber, staring at the image of Earth glowing softly on his screen. He had expected fire, resistance, maybe even a counterstrike. Instead, Earth had shown him his own past. His great-grandmother's face, the human medic's gentle hands, the moment kindness crossed species and changed fate. He could not unsee it. Across the galaxy, confusion turned to unrest. The Concord's control was slipping. On dozens of worlds, citizens gathered in public squares demanding to know why their history had been rewritten. Soldiers questioned why they were ordered to fear a species that healed instead of harmed. Even loyalists in the Iron Accord began to doubt. How could they call Earth a threat when it had turned planet-cracking beams into light? Captain Elias Rourke knew this moment would not last. Fear would return. Old habits would harden. So he acted fast. He sent a message to every major world in the Concord. Not a demand, not a threat, but an invitation. Come to Mars, it read. Walk the path of echoes. See what was hidden. Then decide. Mars was no longer the red desert it once was. While Earth was gone, humans had secretly terraformed it over centuries, using knowledge gained in the pocket dimension. Now it bloomed with green valleys, silver lakes, and forests that sang in the wind. At its center stood the Unity Conclave, a wide open space with no walls, no thrones, just a winding path made of smooth black stone. The first to arrive was Vraxis. He came not in armor, but in simple robes. Behind him came Senator Orlan Vex, pale and thin from days without sleep. Others followed. Delegates from insectoid hives, gas-breathing diplomats, even a representative from the Iron Accord, though he kept his face covered. Lyra Venn greeted them all at the edge of the path. This is not a test, she said. It is a mirror. Walk it, and you will see what your species forgot. One by one, they stepped onto the path of echoes. The path did not speak. It remembered. As each delegate walked, the stones beneath their feet pulsed with warmth, and visions rose around them. Not projected, but felt. A Zelosian general saw his ancestors signing a treaty of friendship with humans, only for it to be burned by Concord agents. A hive-mind queen relived the moment her colony was saved from a solar flare by human engineers, who gave their lives to shield her young. Even the Iron Accord delegate saw his people's secret pact with early human explorers, a vow to protect each other, broken when the Concord offered power. Some wept. Some fell to their knees. Others stood in stunned silence for hours. High Marshal Kor arrived last. He walked the path with his fist clenched, jaw tight, ready to resist. But halfway through he stopped. The vision came not as a scene, but as a feeling. The warmth of that medic's hand on his great-grandmother's forehead. The quiet hum of a human lullaby sung in a language long dead. He dropped to his knees and sobbed. When he reached the end, Lyra was waiting. You could have destroyed us, he said, voice raw. You had the power. Why didn't you? Because power isn't about what you can take, she replied. It's about what you choose to give. Meanwhile, Dr. Milo Tarek stood on a hill overlooking the conclave. He watched the delegates gather, their old uniforms replaced with simple cloaks woven from Martian silk. They spoke not as enemies, but as beings who had shared a wound and now perhaps a cure. Elias joined him. Do you think it will hold? He asked. Milo looked at the sky where Earth hung like a blue jewel. Truth doesn't vanish once it's seen. It grows. Back on Earth, the planet continued its quiet work. Forests bloomed with flowers that released calming spores into the air. Oceans sent gentle pulses through the solar system, harmonizing with nearby worlds. The moon remained in its protective lattice, not as a weapon, but as a promise. The Concord, fractured and shaken, held an emergency session. Many called for Earth's full integration. Others still whispered of danger. But the tide had turned. The evidence was not in data. It was in hearts. Then came the final test. A rogue fleet from the Outer Rim, loyal to the old ways, launched a surprise attack on a human research station near Jupiter. They expected easy prey. Instead, they found no weapons, only open comms. The station broadcast a single question: "Why do you fight?" The attackers hesitated. Their leader, a scarred veteran named Drex, snarled and ordered fire. But before the weapons charged, the station sent a memory. Not of war, but of Drex's childhood. His first hunt. His father's pride. The moment he chose violence over peace and regretted it every day since. Drex shut off his weapons. He opened a channel. "Tell me," he said, voice breaking. "How do I stop remembering the wrong things?" The station replied, "Start remembering the right ones." News of this spread faster than any battle report. Even the hardest hearts began to soften. On Mars, the delegates began drafting a new charter. Not laws of control, but bonds of memory. They called it the Circle of Remembered Worlds. Earth would not rule it. It would serve it, as keeper of truth, healer of wounds, and guardian of what was lost. Kor, now stripped of his title but not his voice, stood before the group. He placed his ceremonial dagger on the ground. "I offer my service," he said, "not as a soldier but as a student." Elias accepted it, not as a trophy but as a seed. That night, under twin moons, the first meeting of the circle began. No one sat higher than another. No one spoke louder to dominate. They listened. They remembered. They began to heal. Earth had not returned to conquer. It had returned to remind, and the galaxy, for the first time in millennia, was ready to listen. The Circle of Remembered Worlds held its first true gathering not in a grand hall, but in an open field on Mars, beneath a sky streaked with the soft green of auroras. There were no thrones, no raised platforms, no guards, just beings from 100 worlds sitting on the grass, on stones, or floating gently above the ground. All equal. Earth's delegation, Elias, Lyra, and Milo, sat among them, not in front, not apart, just present. The air smelled of rain and blooming night flowers. A child from Earth walked among the group, offering cups of water drawn from a spring that had appeared the day the Path of Echoes was finished. No one knew how it got there. They drank anyway. The water tasted like home, no matter where home was. The meeting began not with speeches, but with silence. For 10 full minutes no one spoke. They simply sat, breathing together, remembering what it felt like to be still. Then Vraxis rose, not to command, but to share. He told the story of his brother, the one he had lost centuries ago, and how Earth's return had made him weep for the first time since the funeral. Others followed. A hive-mind elder spoke of loneliness hidden behind unity. A gas giant diplomat admitted her people had lied about a border conflict to gain resources. Truth spilled out like rivers long dammed. Earth did not judge. It listened. After days of talking, the circle agreed on its first act. The archive of absence would become a living library, open to all. Not stored in machines, but grown in groves where anyone could touch a vine and feel a memory. Not to shame, but to understand. Not to control, but to connect. Back on Earth, the planet continued its quiet work. Cities pulsed with gentle light. Forests rearranged paths for visitors who were lost in more than just space. The oceans sent out low-frequency songs that calmed storms on distant worlds. Earth was no longer just a world, it was a presence like gravity or starlight. But not all wounds healed quickly. In the outer systems, old fears lingered. Some military outposts still trained for war against humans. Rumors spread that Earth's memories were tricks, that its peace was a trap. A small fleet of Iron Accord loyalists gathered near the edge of known space, vowing to cleanse the corruption. Elias knew force would only feed their fear. So he did something unexpected. He sent no ships, no warnings, just a single message, carried by a child's voice recorded on an old Earth device. "We remember you too." The message reached the fleet's commander, a grizzled veteran named Joran who had lost his family in a raid long ago, blamed on human pirates, though the truth was never proven. When he heard the voice, he played it again and again. Then he ordered his fleet to stand down. Later, he traveled to Earth alone. He walked the path of echoes on Mars and saw the truth. The raid had been carried out by conquered Black Ops dressed as humans to justify expansion. His family had died for a lie. Joran stayed. He became a gardener in one of Earth's memory groves, planting trees that bore fruit shaped like stars. Meanwhile, the circle grew. New members arrived weekly, species once thought too wild, too strange, or too broken to join. Earth welcomed them all. It did not ask for oaths or taxes. It asked only one thing. Remember who you are and who you could be. Lyra traveled often, not as an ambassador but as a listener. She sat with elders on frozen moons, played games with children in asteroid nurseries, and shared meals with beings who ate light or sound or silence. Wherever she went, she left behind a seed. Most grew into trees. Some grew into songs. Milo worked with scientists from a dozen worlds, not to build weapons but to heal. They studied Earth's quantum flora, its sentient tides, its time-aware stones. They learned that life did not have to be loud to be powerful. That peace could be precise. That memory could be medicine. Elias rarely spoke in the circle meetings now. He spent his days walking Earth's shores, watching the waves, listening to what the planet whispered. He knew the real work was not in councils or treaties. It was in the small moments. A shared meal, a forgiven wrong, a story told under stars. One evening as the sun set over the Pacific, Kor found him there. The former High Marshal wore simple clothes now, his armor stored away. He carried a small wooden box. "I came to return something," he said. He opened the box. Inside was a seashell, smooth, white, old. "My great-grandmother kept this, from the human who saved her. I kept it hidden for shame. Now I carry it with pride." Elias took the shell, held it to his ear. He heard not the ocean, but a lullaby, soft, human, ancient. "She would be glad," Elias said. Kor nodded. "I've been asked to lead a new school on Mars, teaching history as it truly was. Will you help?" "I'll send a teacher," Elias said. But the best lessons come from the students. Years passed. The galaxy did not become perfect. Conflicts still rose. Mistakes were made. But now when anger flared, someone would say, "Walk the path." When lies spread, someone would say, "Visit the archive." And slowly the galaxy changed, not through force, but through feeling. Earth remained in its orbit, quiet, strong, aware. Its cities glowed at night like constellations brought down to Earth. Its children played with starlight and sang songs that made flowers bloom. Ships from 100 worlds came not to conquer, but to learn. And humanity, once thought lost, once feared, once forgotten, walked among the stars not as rulers, but as reminders. For the galaxy had learned the hardest truth of all, that the most powerful thing in the universe was not a weapon, not a law, not even a star. It was a memory shared in kindness, and Earth remembered everything.